broadcasting. I wonder if we'll ever find the start broadcast button.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are live once again. So, where were we?
Oh man, we were talking about the Bionis and the Mechanis. You had corrected me.
That's right.
That they are not robots, but they are beings with feelings. No, I don't know. But yeah, so they are. Yeah, but I had mentioned how I was just impressed by the idea that the entire game takes place on these two gigantic beings that a world has sprung up on, and a whole ecosystem and life and human beings and everything like that. I just like that is completely different from anything that I've ever seen in a JRPG before.
Mm-hmm.
Like insane. Yeah, I mean, it usually just takes place in a very typical world, and it's got deserts and fields and everything like that, and mountains. But like this is completely different, and just like the scale and the size of everything was just like so impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then one of the we were also talking about the story, and one of the things of the story that I found was really impressive is that and this is once again it's a spoiler cast, so we can say this, but you think that it's setting up this story where Shulk and Ryan and Fiora are going to go off on this quest together, but in fact Fiora gets killed like right at the very beginning of the game, pretty much. And I was like, I don't know about you, but I was totally shocked by that.
Yeah. I mean, like when we saw the trailer for it originally, we saw that part where he yells, "I'll kill you," as Metalface goes flying off. But, we didn't know the context. And now we understand 100% why he was so upset.
Yeah.
And that's something. Oh, go ahead.
No, go, please.
That's something, though, that really impressed me, was that I really felt like the voice actors did a great job conveying the emotions that those characters should have in light of, these events that happened, especially, with Fiora's death. The voice actor for Shulk, did such an amazing job, I thought, really conveying the raw anger and sadness, with the loss of this girl that he cared so deeply about.
Oh yeah, definitely. The voice acting is, I think there are parts of it, really in any game, where there's some corny one-liners or whatever, but I think for the most part, like this is like legitimate voice acting. You're totally right. The emotion that these characters display, like you feel it and you believe it. And like when Shulk,
you really feel it.
Yeah, when Shulk is angry, like I remember, I mean, we're fast forwarding like really far into the game, but I just remember when he, we'll talk about the final boss, but just like the anger at which he just like lashes out against like certain bosses and people at the end. Like I'm like, yes, like if I had the Monado, like I would feel the exact same way right now. Like, and so yeah, I just thought that was really impressive. And once again, I can't tell you the last time I've played a game in which I felt that way, like in which I identified with the characters that much. And I think that does speak to the power of an RPG, and where you've gone on this journey with a group of characters, and then by the end you identify with them, you understand exactly how they're feeling, and so when they feel a certain emotion, like you do too. And so once again, when I said earlier that it's kind of redeemed how I felt about JRPGs and my passion for them, it's because it really accomplishes what they set out to do in the first place, which is to really draw you into these characters that you go on a journey with. So yeah, I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah.
Like incredible voice acting. Um, I wanted to also touch on just what favorite characters we had. Do you have a particular character that stood out to you, or a couple of them?
Well, I think probably for the most part, I would have to say Ryan was the one who stuck out to me the most, just because he's kind of a lughead, but he's also just really funny.
Yeah,
And I mean, it's like you can tell that he really cares about everyone, and um, of course, he has some of the best lines, like "It's rain time," and uh, like some of his comments. He's like, "Good thing I'm here." No, wait, anybody? Expecting confirmation, and yeah, I mean, I think he was probably my favorite character. I mean, I liked Shulk a lot, but he was a really serious character for the most part. He didn't really have any lighthearted moments, and I mean, to a degree, I understand because after having lost Fiora, he was in this point where he was just so focused on getting to the place where he saw the vision and wanting to avenge Fiora by taking down Metalface. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, and I think all the characters had charm and everything. Riki had a really annoying voice, but he was funny sometimes too.
yeah. Ricky seemed like your prototypical Japanese character that you would see in practically any kind of Japanese medium. Like he's cute and he's kind of crazy, and
Yeah.
but one of the interesting things, and it's one of the things I really liked about the game, is that there are there are heart to heart moments that you can have
Yeah.
where that really explores. We talk about the relationships between the characters, that definitely explores the kind of relationships that they have. And um, that's something that I think that if you haven't played the game and you're listening to this, or if you have and you want to experience more of the game, like I definitely suggest that people check out the heart to heart moments, because a character like Ricky that doesn't seem like he has a lot of depth, like there are moments where he talks about like his wife and his kids, and it's very funny, but at the same time you see like who he cares for and what he's
Mhm.
fighting for. And because when you meet him the first time, he's just like he's a hero, and he's going to help. He's going to be the hero pawn, and he's going to help you defeat the bad guys. And it seems just very kind of superficial, like he's just kind of thrown in there. But when you do those heart to heart moments, man, it really just brings him to the forefront and fleshes him out as a character. So
Yeah.
yeah, so like Ricky kind of grew on me throughout the game because of that. I don't know if he was my favorite. For some reason, I really like Dunban. I just think that
Mm.
he's a man's man.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, you have to consider like he has use of one arm,
Mhm.
and he just dominates.
Yeah.
So he's a he is a inspiration to people that have one arm. I guess you can wage war against anybody, if you just put your mind to it. But
Mhm.
another thing that I liked is that about Dunban is that I I kept expecting them to throw certain like plot points out. And one of the things that that they talk about at the beginning of the game that you see is that Dunban is wielding the Monado, and because over time the Monado has an effect on him to where it basically renders his arm useless. And eventually Shulk gets the Monado, and he starts using it, and he sees that like it comes naturally to Shulk, and it doesn't affect him the way that it did Dunban. And I was expecting there to be like a jealousy storyline where Dunban was like, you know, gosh, I wish I could have had that. But like he's very supportive of him,
Mhm.
and like he backs him up. And I don't know, I just there are so many moments throughout the game where, like I said, I was expecting something to happen story wise, and they just completely did something different. I just thought that.
Yeah. I The one thing I have to say is that I never really got a chance to learn much about Dunban and Riki and Melia because I didn't use them very much. I mean, I didn't really discover how great Melia and Riki were until the end of the game when I kind of needed their abilities in order to take down some of the final bosses. And so it was like basically early on, for the most part, I was just using Shulk, Rain, and Sharla because, you have your tank, and then you have Shulk, of course, and then you have Sharla who does all the healing.
Yeah.
But I really feel like whenever I get around to my second playthrough, I definitely want to take the time to work on building up affinity some more with some of the characters, just so that I can do those heart-to-hearts and find out more about these other characters. And of course, then I also really want to use especially Dunban, Riki, and Melia because I hardly ever used them in my first playthrough.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. There are characters that I didn't use. I didn't use Melia as much, like you said. And it's funny, like I just couldn't figure out how to use her attacks. And then I talked to you about it, and you're like, man, it's simple. You just do her magical ability, and then you choose the icon in the middle, and you just dominate them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's that simple.
Yeah, well, the thing is that I didn't even figure out how to use her until I really got to the point where it was like, okay, I need to use her because one of those last boss fights, which we'll get into later, of course, really needed to have someone who was strong on, using ether-based attacks because they were, so strong against physical attacks. And everything I had read from what people said online is that the AI for Melia is not good. And so it's much better to control her yourself. And so I just had to kind of figure it out. I was like, oh, this is dumb. I mean, this is, super obvious. And I can't believe I never figured it out before.
Yeah. And speaking of the combat, and we can get back to the story here in a bit, but I just wanted to touch on it. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the combat is that, I mean, there are many things, but one of the things that stood out to me is that each of your arts that you have, your special, attacks, they are color labeled so that, you don't have to memorize what a certain attack does because like some of them have different effects. Like if it's green, it's going to cause topple, and if it's pink, it's going to cause break. And then like if it's red, then it causes a certain kind of damage, whether that's bleed or something like that. So I loved how they basically organized it that way. And I mean, was there anything about the combat that stood out to you?
Well, I mean, in my review, I kind of compared it to Final Fantasy XII because I felt like there were definitely some similarities. I mean, of course, Final Fantasy XII had the gambit system, which this game doesn't have. But it does have, the ability to... it does have a lot of auto-attacking, which to some degree I didn't like, but at the same time, I understood why they did it because of the pace of combat. It would just be too difficult to have to input commands constantly. And and of course, I mean, one of the things that I loved most about the combat, which was not even really the combat itself, even though I did love the combat, and that's the music, especially for like unique monsters and for boss battles, and when you're fighting Mechonis, when you're fighting Mechon on Mechonis, because most of those are composed by Ace Plus, and they're just like blood pumping great themes to listen to. And it's just every time I listen to them, every one of them just gets my blood pumping, and it's just like, yeah, awesome.
I mean, the music is incredible. Yeah. Did you have a favorite theme that stood out to you from the game?
Well, I mean, I have to say probably, there are so many good pieces. But I mean, Ace Plus, I think, was probably my favorite composer of the various ones that were on there. But that's not to discount how great some of the other ones were. Like Yoko Shimomura, who's also done composing for Kingdom Hearts. And I definitely got some of that, some of her style. Like when I listen to the regular battle theme, when you're just fighting normal monsters, it reminded me a lot of the Kingdom Hearts battle theme. And so I was like, this sounds so familiar. And then I found out it was the same composer, and it made a lot of sense. And I really like her music for Colony 9, specifically when you're outside of the colony, just walking around that area. I think that's a brilliant theme. The Gour Plains is, of course, absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah.
Theme. And then with the battle themes, I think probably if I was going to pick a favorite, even though there are several that are great, probably the one called You Will Know Our Names, which is the one that plays every time you fight against a unique monster.
That's just an epic title. You will know our names. Yeah. Another cool thing is that when it turns to night, then the music changes as well. So you get like a different kind of a more somber, take on the song. So it's kind of funny, but I really like the Frontier Village music, and especially the night one. And it's funny, but I literally did this. I was like having a hard time going to sleep one night, and so like I pulled up the song on YouTube, and I just listened to the night song, and I was like starting to doze off. So like it's like it was really relaxing. But I mean, like I said, this game it had weird effects on me, man. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what the deal is with Xenoblade Chronicles and the things that it's doing to me. But yeah, so the music is incredible. Have you heard Smooth McGroove do the
yes,
the acapella of Gour Plains?
Gour Plains, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like on one hand, like I can't believe how high he can sing, but like, oh my! If you haven't listened to that and you're listening to this or watching this, like, oh my gosh, check out Smooth McGroove on YouTube and all of the other stuff that he does. That's a tangent, but yeah. So also, when you have combat, you're leveling up. There are different ways for you to level up. You can, of course, grind and fight monsters, or you can do side quests. And I was curious, how much did you use side quests versus combat to level up your characters?
Well, I never intentionally did side quests for leveling up. When I did them, it was more than anything, especially early on, because I just like doing side quests. It's a nice little extra thing to do, and most of the time they weren't too bad, because it would be like, hey, I'm already running into this monster anyway. All I got to do is kill it, and the side quest is done. I don't even have to go back to talk to people. Now, that wasn't always the case, of course. There's definitely a lot of times where you do have to go back, and sometimes it's a challenge finding certain people. If you don't make a note of where they're supposed to be, or I ended up using the wiki a lot to find people because it made it easier. But I think more than anything, what I ended up using the side quest for was when I needed to raise affinity, especially getting the 2 hidden Monado arts. Especially for Frontier Village, that one took me way too long to get that up, but it was worth it because Monado Eater is an amazing, very, very useful ability. Did you end up getting that?
No, I was about to say, I gave up on getting Eater because I was right toward the end, and I was, I had almost beaten the final boss like a couple of times. And so I went and got Monado Armor, which is really easy. You can get that in like 20 minutes.
Exactly.
And so I was really surprised because it's like a secret art. You'd think they would make it a little harder, but I mean, they definitely made it harder on like you said, Frontier Village. So I never got around to doing that, but
second playthrough.
Exactly. I mean, there will be a second playthrough. There's no doubt about that. I also just wanted to point out that the affinity chart would allow you to see all of the different characters that you could come in contact with as well. And I don't know if it had to do with, because I saw it with some characters and I didn't see it with other ones. So I definitely want to see when I go back through my second playthrough. But like there is a kind of Majora's Mask element to it where it would
Mhm.
tell you like where they'll be and what
Yeah.
time they're going to be there, and I like that. But
Yeah.
like I said, I didn't see it with every character, but I think that maybe has to do with the amount of affinity that you've built up in a certain area. You start to uncover more of that. But yeah, I really liked how they did that, so you weren't just like running around, and then
Yeah.
you can change the time of the day as
Oh
well.
yeah, very easily. That was really nice.
I mean, like I can't imagine what it would be like to just like wait around until it turns a certain time. They just like although it breaks reality, like it does it in a way that like really helps the game. I feel like because
Mhm.
you're already putting tons of hours into this game if you're going to play it all the way through. The last thing you want to do is just have extra time of just sitting around, chopping away at monsters, maybe just waiting for the time to
Yeah.
to get to a certain spot. So yeah, that was one of the things that I was like really just shocked by that they included that in there, and then on top of that, that you can fast travel to all of the places that you've been to. That really helps with those
Yeah.
with the like different quests and stuff. You get one where you have to go to a different place to get a certain item and bring it back to another area, and man, like, and it's a huge world. So I mean,
Yeah.
it just helps so much. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that. Um,
Yeah. And one thing I want to say about, the size of the world,
mm,
um, I really feel like this game is the biggest game I've ever played in terms of the size and the scale. Now, that's not to say that it's as complex as like Skyrim or The Witcher, things like that, where I mean, or GTA, where there's definitely a lot of complexity, but those maps are not nearly as large as just the sheer amount of area and the scope and the scale. I mean, your characters are tiny compared to a lot of things you come across in the environment,
yeah,
and it's a really impressive scale, especially for being on the 3DS of all places, where it's a small screen. um and I feel like obviously the Wii version would do a better job um communicating that scale a bit, just because you can play it on a big screen.
yeah,
um but on that note, just a little side thing. I have to say that while I definitely can say without question that the Wii version has better textures than the 3DS version, especially comparing the two, I still feel like they did a really good job. And I mean, the fact that they got such a humongous game onto a handheld is impressive. And I mean, it does show that the new 3DS, while it's not as powerful as the Wii, it's still pretty dang powerful, because you know if they hadn't put the game in 3D, they probably could have done better textures, but they wanted to keep the game in 3D and keep the frame rate consistent. And um, one thing I said in my review was that I never really noticed any frame rate drops. As I played more, there were occasions where if you have a lot of enemies on screen, it can slow down a bit,
yeah,
but it was never unplayable as far as the frame rate goes.
yeah, and
And the
like
3D effect was fantastic.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like that's one of the things you hear oftentimes about 3DS games is like you can play it, but you don't need to use the 3D effect on this game. It's not really necessary. But this is like one of the games that I've played on the 3DS where I felt like, oh my gosh, like how can you not play this in 3D? Like you got to have that. You got to have that turned on because, like you said, just the size and the scope of the environments that you're in are just incredible, and the 3D really just brings it all together. And one of the things that I really liked about it is that they encourage exploration. If you go to
Mhm.
a certain place, you unlock not only a fast travel area, but it gives you experience as well. And I mean, I that's what I loved, and then there were areas where maybe you would wander into. I remember you had talked to me about you came across like a creature that was like over 100
Yeah.
100, his experience was over 100, and it's like you can only get to 90, like your characters can only get to 99. And I just love it, like you just explore this world and then you just come across this beast that you're like just like kind of came out of nowhere, and like no matter how good you get, there's no way there's no way you can take this dude down, so you kind of have to like sneak around them. And they're not all like 100 plus level monsters,
Yeah.
but like when you're early on in the game, like you're like level 20 and you'll come across like level 60 monsters, and you're like, all right, I see that there's some kind of item over there that I want to get. How do I sneak around and get past these things? And then like they spot you and you're like, oh no, I need to run.
Mm-hmm.
So um, and I forget the name of the creature, but there was like some kind of it was after Frontier Village, after you get Ricky, and you're in the I think it's called Machina Forest, or um,
Magna Forest, yeah.
yeah, and like there's these like huge like T-Rex looking things, and
Mm-hmm.
um, like they're just like massively powerful, and I just remember getting chased by one of them. I was like, how awesome is this? I'm getting chased by a giant T-Rex and a JRPG. So that, and then one other thing I just wanted to agree with you on, and just say is that, um, like you said, it's really impressive that they were able to get this onto the 3DS. Like I don't know how many times I just would play the game and something would happen, and I would say, like, oh my gosh, like how is this even possible in this little tiny device? Really incredible. Uh, so I want to talk a little bit more about story. Were there any moments that were some of your most epic or favorite moments of the game that you saw in the storyline?
Well, to be kind of general to start, I would say um, just the twists, because there
Yeah,
were a bunch of things that I did not see coming. Um, like this one is like maybe halfway through the game, really, when you find out that um, Fiora is operating one of the Mechon, one of the faced Mechon, and that she's not exactly dead.
yeah,
And so it was like, I mean, suddenly there's, this hope that you can get Fiora back. And I mean, you do find out, of course, that her human body was destroyed and that what she's in right now is a Mechon body, or Machina body,
hmm
something like that.
yeah. No, yeah, that blew me away. I was not expecting that whatsoever. I would read like some wikis where they would talk about a character called Seven, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Who is Seven?" Like, and it turns out that like people are saying that so that they won't spoil who it is. It's just they call him
Yeah.
Seven because it's the seventh character that you get to
Yeah.
play as. So I just thought that that was really cool. I was like, "Man, I can't wait to play as this Seven person," and I had no idea that it was Fiora. I just thought that was incredible. I also love that, you know, the whole premise of the first half of the game is Shulk and Ryan trying to get back at the Mechon because they killed Fiora. Essentially, it's like a revenge quest. And by the time before they get to Fiora, Shulk resolves that this is about more than revenge. I just love that by the time he comes to peace with the fact that, I have to fight for something more than revenge is when Fiora comes back to him. And
Yeah.
so I love that, I love that he resolved that, and that he grew as a character, that they grew him as a character before they brought Fiora back into the picture, because
Mhm.
I think it would have just I don't think it would have been as weighty, for them to
Yeah.
have this revenge quest, and then, oh, she's actually alive the whole time, like they wouldn't really have as much of a reason to fight the battle if they hadn't done it the way that they did. So yeah, I thought that that was really incredible. Yeah, I mean, she looks awesome. Like all of the different
Yeah.
armors that she has, because she's like half, or I would say like 90% robot, and like except for her
Yeah.
head. So, um, what did let me just see. What did you think about Charla's uh, story? Did you, since we're on the subject of the female characters, did you like Charla's character or her story?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Charlotte was a good character. I really can't say that there's any character that I didn't like. And I really thought that, I mean, of course, Charlotte was really useful in battle, but also just that it was like, you could see where she was coming from, that, she really, cared for, what's his face?
Gatto.
uh, Gatto, yeah, that's
Uh,
right. Um, and that she, as far as she was concerned, she had lost him.
mhm.
And so, she was trying to help rebuild Colony 6 and taking care of her brother and everything. And, fighting against Mechon in order to, to give Colony 6 a chance to rebuild itself. And, then she kind of realizes that she can't do much good unless she goes out and helps out, and ends up joining everyone. And I really liked the way that her and Ryan's relationship went, because you could tell that Ryan was just trying to help her, and he cared, but he wasn't pushy, he wasn't hitting on her or anything. But you could tell that there was a spark there between them.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Yeah, he was a truest gentleman
Hmm.
in the truest form of the word. Yeah, I thought, yeah, I really like Charlotte a lot. Like you said, she's the medic, and so she's always tending to all of the other teammates. And so I like how her personality and like the things that she was passionate about very much fit in with like what her arts were and her skills were.
Hmm.
I thought that was really cool. And then Melia Antiqua, and I thought that I really enjoyed her character as well. Like these characters, they just deal with situations in a different way than you would expect them. I mean, like you
Yeah.
said, there are plot twists, but there are also like twists in their reactions to different things. One of the interesting things with Amelia is that she likes Shulk. She
Hmm.
has a like she really cares for him, and you see that she's in love with Shulk, but like what they say in the story is that like Shulk is oblivious to it. He doesn't realize it, and
Yeah.
uh, and then Fiora comes back into the picture, and I really enjoyed how they really handled the story very much differently than you would see in like your normal like movie, basically, because
Hmm.
basically it would be like a love triangle, and Millie is jealous of Fiora and hates her guts, but like she likes Fiora as well, like as a friend. She really um like feels for her. And so like by the end of the story, there's a conversation with Charla and Melia where Charla's like, you're giving up on Shulk, and she's like, well, my goal is to make sure that Shulk and Fiora, can have a life together. And I just thought that was incredible. Like I feel like you just don't see that out of
Hmm.
characters and games, or really in really any medium. I feel like
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
it's really easy to go for the whole jealousy love triangle, which, I mean, let's be honest, we always love a good love triangle.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and what makes it even worse is that there's always, I mean, most of these love triangle situations, it ends up being that it turns out like the old girlfriend or whatever, it happens to be absolutely a horrible person, or that one of the two of them is a horrible person, and
yeah.
then the other person comes along, and you know they make it so that you're basically rooting for this other person. And when it came to Fiora and Melia, I was going back and forth a lot, because it's like, on the one hand, I mean, I've wanted Fiora and Shulk to be together because it's obvious that, I mean, they've known each other since they were kids. They love each other, whether or not they're both willing to, come out and say it. And of course, Shulk's a bit oblivious about that as well. But at the same time, it's like, Melia, she has so much class, and, it's like, you feel for her.
Yeah.
That she cares about Shulk, and, with Fiora coming back, it's pretty obvious nothing's going to come of it, unless, by some chance, Fiora is in fact stuck with her mechanical body and is not going to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Melia is also, she's a princess, and, her father dies, and she is the next in line to the throne. And so you just see she just bears so much weight. She bears the emotional weight, but she also bears the weight of, how do I lead my kingdom, and when I'm so young. And so, yeah, they have her balance things that a lot of characters don't end up balancing in stories. And so I thought just the way that they wrote her character was really incredible. And yeah.
And then, of course, there's also, the reality. I mean, her trying to figure out why it was that she was chosen to be the successor, with her being half Homs and half Hyentia. And, it's like, you see that she will be good for the role, and her brother is very supportive of her, even though he's her half brother and he's full Hyentia. And, you eventually find out, of course, that the reason for it is because all Hyentia are going to turn into Telethia. I mean, it's part of how they were designed. And so because she's half Homs, she doesn't have to deal with that. And so it's like there was a good reason behind it, and she didn't even know it, even though her father knew it and her brother knew it.
Yeah. That freaked me out when that happened. When they started turning into these freakish, monsters. Oh my gosh.
The Dino Beasts.
The Dino Beasts, as Ricky would say. Yeah. Wonderful character, Melia, and a terrifying sight to see all of her loved ones turn into terrible beasts. Let's a moment of silence for all of the Hyentia. So I we're talking about the story. Did you enjoy the pacing of the story? Because you're having to deal with the story, but then you have your side quests and everything else going on in the game. Do you feel like they had a good balance?
I mean, I would say for the most part. I mean, personally, I think I probably would have been able to get it more as a cohesive whole to a degree if I had spent a little more time grinding in between, because it's like I was so into the story at times that I just wanted to continue on, so I wouldn't put forth the effort, and then I'd find myself in a position where I have to spend a bunch of time grinding in order to beat a boss. And but the story was so good that I just wanted to keep going. And so even when I did take a break for a little while from the game just because I was burnt out on grinding. But then when I started getting back into it and started putting forth the effort a bit more and was able to get leveled up a bit, I was able to continue the game and, finished it up. And, yeah, I mean, I thought that the story was really good. There was, it was a good lengthy story, and there was lots of twists and turns, lots of things that I did not see coming. I mean, every single, I don't think there was a single twist that I was like, I saw that coming.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I was blown away by all of the different surprises. Had more twists than a Metal Gear Solid game. I don't know. Maybe not. I think that Metal Gear can have 6 twists in one scene. So, but it's right up there. It's right up there as far as plot twists go. But yeah, when it comes to pacing, I think that may have been the one area in which I thought was uh, not lacking, but it was just kind of muddled because like I would want to I would want to do quests and I would want to do the story and I would want to kind of grind and fight some monsters, and I just never felt like they struck like the perfect balance between all of those because granted there are hundreds upon hundreds of side quests to do,
Hmm.
and so you don't know like you don't know exactly how many you should do. You don't because unless you're following like a strategy guide, which is very common, you know, with RPGs. I think a lot of people do. Unless you're using that, like you don't know like should I stop grinding and should I pursue the story? Like you know what you know how should I go? And I would think that like once I kind of was like 2 or 3 levels above the enemies that I was facing, that like I would be ready to go. But there would be times where like that still like I still needed to level up even more to face like a boss or something like that. So I don't know if they necessarily did the best job in um, kind of pacing that and making sure that you were in a situation where you were totally you know, outpowered. But with that being said, even if you were, it wasn't like you were stuck. Like you could go back and you could, you know, re-level up and get back to where you needed to be. Um, I feel like with a lot of games, when you die, like they kind of penalize you for dying, and I never felt like I was penalized for trying to go up against a bad guy that I had no business fighting.
Yeah.
Frankly, yeah. So I thought they did a really great job with that. Um, so let's talk a little bit more about the story. As you can see, we're talking a lot about the story, but that's because there is just a ton of story. So, what did you think about so one of the twists is that there is a character called Dixon, and you think that Dixon is on your side the entire game, and toward the end, he turns on you, and it turns out that he's working for the bad guy at the game, Zanza. Were you shocked by that?
Absolutely. And I mean, of course, preceding that, there was just finding out that the Bionis was bad and that the Mechonis was actually, you know, not quite so bad. I mean, obviously, the Mechon were attacking because of their leader being misguided. But yeah, I mean, definitely Dixon shooting Shulk in the back was not expected at all. You know, I mean, of course, finding out a little bit before that, you know, about Zanza and, you know, what kind of role he had, it was surprising. And then, of course, you know, Shulk is at this point where he could kill Egil and he refuses to, decides, you know, that it's not the thing to do. It's not the right thing to do. And then Dixon shoots him in the back. And yeah, so it's like suddenly everything that Dixon did, you realize there was something sinister behind it the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, and
And yeah.
yeah, you know, I mean, I totally agree. Like that's one of those moments once again where there were like 3 different twists that all happened at once. Where like
Mhm.
you realize that you know basically, like you said, you know, the bad guy of the game you think is Egil, and like you realize his motives, and then you're like, oh well, you know, I can kind of see where he's coming from. He's clearly shouldn't be killing Homs, you know, and High Intia, but you know, like I can kind of see where he's coming from. And then about the time that you feel like kind of pity for him, like that's when they reveal like who the real bad guys are. And you know, yeah, like you said, when he shoots Shulk, oh my gosh, like I could not believe that. Because I kind of liked Dixon. Like
Mhm.
he was like this tough guy, and he had kind of traveled all around, you know, the world essentially. And he would always like they said that he would like bring back supplies, and like man, so you knew about the high Intia and you knew about the Mekon, and you knew all about all of this stuff. And so he just seemed like the all around cool dude, like the guy that if you were stuck in the wilderness, like you would want to be with Dixon. But yeah, he turned out to be a big jerk, working for Zanza the whole time.
Turned out to be a son of a dick.
As they say, in the Bionis. But I felt like Lauren Thea, I think that was the character's name. She was basically like was an advisor for the king of the High Entia. That was pretty obvious. I feel like that was the one character that you knew like she was bad. But Albus, on the other hand,
he was confusing. I mean, an interesting character, but it was like, you had no idea who he was, what his motives were. And I mean, on the one hand, it's like, well, you saw him discussing with Larithia, things, and so you started to question his motives. And then you see him talking to Dixon. At the time, you think, Dixon's a good guy, and so there's, that's weird, and it just was really interesting. I mean, I think we should wait to talk about that until we get a little bit later, since it doesn't really get revealed till the actual end. What's his deal, other than the fact that he is among Zanza's crew. But Alvis was interesting, and like you said, Larithia, it's like the second you saw her, just everything about her was sinister.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. But then I started to question. I was like, okay, they keep throwing these twists at me, so maybe she isn't as bad as I think she is. Yeah. But then she ended up being just as bad as I thought she was. So, but it's really cool when you fight her finally. You go through the Bionis. Am I correct? Is that?
Yeah.
Or yeah. So you go like inside the Bionis. And so I thought that was really just a cool part of the game where I felt like I had kind of seen everything that I was going to see out of the game, and then they throw that environment where you're like seeing this like mechanical / like organic environment. Was really, really great how they threw that together. So I'm trying to think. It's such a huge game. I'm trying to think really what comes after Dixon and Laurenthea being revealed as Zanza's disciples. Are we missing anything? Is there anything that you want to cover story-wise that we haven't talked about?
I mean, when after Dixon shoots Shulk in the back, you basically find out that Shulk was dead when Dixon found him, and that he was being used as a shell for Zanza. And initially, it really seemed like Shulk was just dead. I actually thought he was completely dead. I thought that they were basically saying that, that once Zanza left his body, that he was nothing, that he was just an empty shell, and that, he couldn't be brought back to life or anything, and that the rest of the game you weren't going to have Shulk. And thankfully I was wrong. But it was like I was kind of prepared. I actually thought when at that point when you first fight against Zanza with Fiora, I thought maybe that was the last fight, because it seemed like Shulk was actually dead, and of course he wasn't. But that part actually confused me a little bit because of the way that they explained it. But I guess somehow Shulk had been given life to his body through Zanza, and even though Zanza left the body, his body still had life somehow. Yeah,
I think that's kind of the theme, like towards the end of the game, that you realize is that like they don't need these quote unquote gods like in order to live their lives. Like I think that's kind of the point of it, and we'll get towards that toward the end. But so yeah, but like you said, they don't really explain that. Like, and maybe they don't need to, but you just know that. Like, you just know that at that part where right after that, where they're trying to fend off the colony from the Telethia, and they're like, okay, like we thought we could do this, but we can't do this. And then finally Shulk runs out there and like just dominates them. I was like,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And I thought it was great that they were able to make a replica of the Monado. I mean, obviously it was, looked completely different, but it was like I had no idea that they were capable of that. But at the same time, I mean, it kind of made sense because, they had already been able to make weapons that could damage Mechon, which before that point we thought only the Monado could do it. And so I thought that was pretty neat. And of course, then finding out that they had ideas for more Monado replicas with different types of stats and attack and whatnot, most of which are really difficult to get unless you're a very high level.
Yeah.
Which ones did you end up getting of the replicas?
I got the first and the second replica, like not
Yeah.
including like the replica that they make for you
Yeah.
originally, but like the next two after that.
Yeah.
I got those, and then I think once you get to like the third and fourth one is when it starts getting pretty high up there. And but because you have to fight these monsters, and then they after you kill pretty much all of them, any monster that you come across and you kill, pretty much all of them leave a treasure chest, and you open it up and you get some kind of item out of it. So, like just tracking down those monsters, like it took a while to find them, and then to actually kill them. They're pretty powerful, so it takes a while to take them down. So I felt like after I got the second one, I was like, okay, I think this is all that I'm going to need to make it to the end of the game. And mind you, the whole time that I'm doing this, I know that when I do my second playthrough, like I'm coming after those other ones. I want to get them because I saw like pictures of them online, and like they're just incredible. Like they look awesome, and like they don't look like the original Monado. They all look very different and unique from each other. So which ones did you end up getting?
Same.
Okay.
I mean, I got the second one first, and then I grabbed the first one after that. And I mean, between the two, the second one was much better because of the increased block rate. It became really useful, especially for fighting Dixon.
Oh yeah, for sure, because he just like doesn't stop attacking at all. And also the whole time that I'm playing the game, like I enjoy getting weapons and armor for all of the other characters, but like you were stuck with the Monado, and although the Monado is a really cool weapon, I think we would all love our own very personal Monado in real life, like we would all like a lightsaber. I kind of missed out on getting something for Shulk and updating his weaponry. So I like that that by the end of the game they had kind of opened it up where you could get more weapons for him, even though it's just 5 replicas. Like you said, it's just they all have different abilities and they're all very unique. So I really enjoyed that. And oh man, I got to get those Monado. Like I'm sitting here right now and I'm like, maybe I should have gotten the third and fourth one. Maybe I should have leveled up. But like you said,
but that's a lot of time to put in because I mean, there's enemies that are in like high 90s that you have to fight, and I mean, like I was at level 80 when I went and finally took down Dixon, and finished the game from there, and it was like, I didn't want to grind another 10 levels just so that I could get these other swords that ultimately weren't going to be of much use once you got the true Monado.
Yeah.
But there was something else. One thing that was a little annoying to me about the weapon and armor system was just that it was so difficult to get a matching set of armor. And mostly because of the fact that the pieces of, I mean, like, the best stats were typically on varying pieces of armor. And, with the exception of like Ryan, where I could pretty easily get him a matching set, Shulk, I would have his armor sets would be all over the place. And it's just like, I don't like the way this looks. It looks terrible.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a very small thing, but when you're playing the game for a very long time, it becomes a very like just a little frustrating element to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I mean, Shulk's the main character. He's gotta have an awesome outfit for him, and for
Yeah.
him to, just look like he was basically using the last of his dirty clothes or something. Just like
Yeah.
throwing whatever didn't smell too bad on.
Yeah.
Just piecing it all together. So, but yeah,
Hey.
with that being said, they have some pretty cool armor.
Yeah. Real quick, I need to let my cat out of the bedroom because he's going crazy.
Okay. And that's the great thing about Geeks with Wives is we all have animals. I have a wiener dog named Slink, and he's actually sleeping. He spends 90% of the day sleeping. So I wish I could have that life sometimes. While Nathan is up, I will go ahead and say I would definitely check out his review and definitely comment on it on the website. You just go to geekswithwives.com and you'll see all of the different reviews. If you just do a search for Xenoblade Chronicles, his review should be one of the first things that comes up, and definitely check it out. Looks like he's taking care of the cat.
Sorry about that. I had them weaved underneath my hoodie, and so I was having problems getting everything out.
Well, it's cool. As long as it works for you, that's all that matters for me. You didn't encounter any Telethia on the way to the cat?
No.
Okay, that's good.
Not this time.
We'll see. We'll see what happens next time. Okay, so we've learned that Shulk is, he was kind of like a host body for Zanza. He's come back to life, essentially, got a new Monado. And so really at this point is really kind of where it revs up toward the the final chapter of the game. Mm-hmm. And I just was wondering, so you beat Laurenthia, and then you have the opportunity to face Dixon, and then they do the typical thing where it's like they very heavily hint to you, Dunban says, like, after this point we can't go back. I have a feeling that we can't go back after this. So how much time did you spend before facing Dixon? Did you grind a little bit, or how did you get ready for that?
Well, after I beat Laurenthia, I think I went up a couple of levels, and most of that was really just, I can't remember how much I actually spent time grinding. I think that because at that point I already had all the Monado abilities, so I didn't need anything else, and I wasn't going after special Monado replicas. But I just grinded a couple of levels or gained a couple of levels as I was going through Prison Island. And I just barely beat that dragon right before you ascend the tower. And I saved right before I went up, and I tried to take down Dixon at 77 with him being level 80. And I got it in close a few times, but after fighting like 10 times, I finally just realized, okay, this is not working. I need to actually take some time to level up. So I went back out and I went ahead and leveled up, and it took a while, mostly because it was hard to find enemies that were high enough levels to give enough experience to where it wasn't going to take forever, because if they're more than a couple levels lower than you, they give jack for experience. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up fighting quite a few enemies that were actually like higher levels than me towards the end, just because of the fact that I heard that those were ones that were better to fight, and I actually didn't have too much trouble. There was some level like 82 to 84 enemies in Sartorial Swamp. Yes. And I ended up going after those, and those ones weren't bad at all, actually. with the right strategy. And then I ended up just deciding to go ahead and go after some of the replica Monados, and thankfully was able to get that second one, which really helped. But yeah.
I did the same thing. I went to Sotoro Marsh, and I mean, maybe it's cheating, but hey, they designed the game a certain way, and if they did it, then so be it. But there's I forget the name of the monster, but there's a monster that's kind of like on a bridge, and if you can just knock him off the bridge, then he dies, and you get like all of this experience. And so I kind of exploited that. So I know that's kind of cheating a little bit, people, but like, come on. I'm trying to save the world here. I'm not going to make excuses for it.
Well, I mean, I just remember you showing me that video that was supposed to be an exploit for getting, easy experience. And then you knocked it was showing them knocking off some enemies out in Gower Plains. And, but it only gave them like 1,500 experience, which was nothing.
Yeah.
Even though it was, like 60 levels higher than them.
Yeah, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. I don't know why.
Probably because they didn't actually fight them; they just knocked them off a bridge.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So, but it actually worked out well for me. And then another thing that I started doing is that, like, we kind of touched on this, but once again, they reward you for exploring the areas, but there are secret areas as well that are kind of hidden, and if you can find them, they give you a lot of experience. And so I made it a point to find all of the different secret areas, and that at least got me like halfway leveled up, to the next level. So, I mean, anytime that you can just get easy experience points, I mean, it's totally worth it. And it's just cool, like we said, it's cool to just explore an area and find like a hidden place. It's just I just think that's incredible how they work that in there. So yeah, I kind of did that, and then just kind of grinded and took out some enemies, and then tried to level up, and then we'll kind of get to it. But yeah, I had a hard time taking down Dixon, and then when it came to Zanza at the end, I just could not beat Zanza. I just was like, just messaging you like crazy. Like, I'm doing everything I can. I just can't beat the man. And so I ended up getting up to 82 before I went to fight Dixon and Zanza for the final time. But I had to change up my party. And so that's what I was going to go with. What was your final crew that you used to fight Dixon and Zanza? Or did you change them up, or how did that work?
Well, I did end up changing them up. Dixon, I went with my standard party, which was Shulk, Ryan, and Sharla. And at level 8, I mean, being a level 80 made a humongous difference. I mean, he was so much easier. And I mean, I got through him on my first try without any problems. Well, my first try at level 80 anyway.
Yeah.
But then I tried fighting Zanza with the same party, and I just couldn't do it. I tried multiple times, and I was just not getting fast enough. I wasn't taking out his little summoned clone things. And so I was just having too much trouble, and I finally decided, okay, well, maybe I need to try changing up my party. And I ended up putting Fiora as my tank and Riki as someone to use debuffs. So I didn't actually have a regular healer, but there was enough stuff that they were doing, with their various effects and whatnot, that it didn't matter. And I was able to get through. I think it only took me like 2 tries for the first form, and the second form, it only took me 1 try. Maybe it might have taken me 2 tries. I can't remember, but it was not a lot. It wasn't super difficult for me. It was mostly just a matter of focusing on him and attacking him only, because of course he summons those angel clone things close to the end of the second fight, and if you divert your attention, yeah, you could take them out to keep them from doing damage. But at that point, I'd already done so much damage to him that it was like, I need to just focus on taking him out, because otherwise he's going to end up healing himself. And it was a risk that paid off.
Yeah. And he also heals them as well, like the little angel people. Like, it was so frustrating, like, to like get them like almost taken out, and then he heals them, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is how the bad guys feel whenever I do that.
Exactly. And the nice thing was that having Riki, because of all of his debuffs, Zanza was constantly taking damage, and same with his angel things, that it helped them to die a lot faster. And then of course, having Monado Eater, I could nullify his haste and regen. I can't remember if he did that too, or if that was just Dixon, but anytime he did one of those and I used Eater, then it would make it so that he would start bleeding, and then he's losing health that way. And since Fiora and Riki were distracting him, I could just keep using backslash and split edge on his side to lower his defense. And then on top of that, I also had gems equipped that lowered defense and lowered attack. And it ended up going really smoothly. And then of course, the third fight, you have the Monado 3, which I forgot to equip gems to it, but it was an easy fight.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot to do that as well. I didn't even think about that until you just mentioned it. So crazy. Like we said, second playthrough, right? I went with, as far as Dixon was concerned, I went with Shulk, Dunban, because, as I've said, I make no apologies for it. I have a man crush on Dunban. So Shulk, Dunban, and Sharla. And I could just dominate with them, because Sharla, she's your medic and she heals, and then Shulk has a healing ability, and so it just kind of, anytime anybody can heal. But yeah, when I got to Zanza, it was just like all of my strategies just kind of went out the window, because they just weren't working with him. He's constantly attacking. He sends the angels after you. And so I, like you, ended up going with Riki as my number 2 guy, and then leaving Sharla in there. And even though she's not doing a lot of damage, she's constantly healing your party. And so I went with that crew. But my story is a little frustrating, because once again, this is a handheld game that we're playing on. So I thought, I took it to work with me, and I was like, okay, I have like all these different breaks, and during my breaks I'm going to beat Xenoblade today. And so I beat Dixon, was pumped about that, closed my 3DS, and I'm like, okay, I got Zanza, I'll take Zanza down easy. And I just couldn't do it. And so I finally got to his third and final form, and then my 3DS ran out of battery, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I've got to do this all over again. And it actually ended up working out, because after I charged it, I went and got like another level, and then did the whole Dixon Zanza thing, and got my Monado armor ability that you told me about, and just kind of retweaked some of the gems on the weapons, and then it worked out. So I took out Zanza like in my first try. And so it's just like, it's so funny, like when you finally figure it out, how easily you can take care of these bad guys. But you kind of have to die several times to kind of figure out the best way to do it. But like we said earlier, like I never felt penalized by any of that. It was just like, okay, you haven't figured this out. Once you come back, when you've learned a little bit more about the game. And so I like how they rewarded that.
Yeah, and I appreciated the fact that anytime you took out an enemy, even if you died after that, any experience that you gained at up to that point, you kept when you revived. when you came back. So, I mean, of course, the one downside was that enemies would respawn, and there was several occasions where like I'd be going after a unique enemy, which even if they were a few levels lower than me, I had a lot of trouble with them. And, you know, like I'd get them most of the way dead, but then they'd kill me and I'd have to come back to that area trying to take them out, and all the enemies would have respawned, and it was just frustrating. But yeah, I mean, like you said, you know, it as punishing as it could be.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you defeat Zanza, and then they dropped his. Well, hold on. Before we get to the ending, real fast, I just want to point out one thing which blew my mind, which is after you beat Dixon, you end up in space, and you're like walking around like Saturn, and then you go through a portal, and you're like at Jupiter, and then you're at Mars, and then you get to Earth, and that's when you come across Zanza, and then and then and so then you fight him and you beat him, and then what do you find out, Nathan?
Well, first off, is your phone battery getting low?
No, it's good.
Because you're breaking up a little bit.
Uh-oh. Is that better? Better, worse? Okay.
I think maybe.
We'll see. Can you hear me now? Like, am I audible? Everything?
Okay, I see you again. Yeah, talk.
I'm talking. How am I doing? How do I sound?
You're breaking up.
No, we made it to the end of this thing. All right, how do I sound now? Hold on real quick.
Okay.
Am I better? Better, worse? How am I doing? Oh my goodness. I'm the weak link of tonight's podcast. How am I doing? Can you hear me?
Still breaking up a little bit, but I see your picture again.
No, my picture just disappeared. I don't know what's happening. It's like, oh, no. Is it me? Is it you? Nathan?